Welcome to the All Candidates meeting hosted by the Discovery Islands Chamber of Commerce. My name is Sarah Bradshaw. I'm the Vice President of the Discovery Islands Chamber of Commerce, and I will be the moderator this evening. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we are gathered here today on the traditional unceded territories of the Wewakai, Wewakam, Klehus, Hamalko, Tlowitsis, Kwaika, and Comox First Nations. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and work on these lands, and we honor the history, culture, and traditions of the Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands for generations. We are pleased to host this opportunity for residents of Quadra Island and the surrounding Discovery Islands to meet our North Island Powell River candidates running in the upcoming federal election on Monday, April 28th. The four candidates in attendance this evening, in order of speaking this evening, is Tanille Johnston on the far side here from the NDP party, Jessica Wegg from the Green Party, Jennifer Lash for the Liberal Party, and Glen Staples, who's running as an independent. This is your opportunity to ask questions and to learn more about our candidates. Before we get started, I will lay out the order of the evening. The purpose of my role as the moderator is just to ensure that the guidelines are followed during the meeting.
didn't bring up a lot the last time I ran, because it wasn't so relevant. But now we've got a constitutional crisis south of the border that's affecting us, and having this skill set is unique, and it is important to have somebody who can fight the U.S. government using the U.S. Constitution in the United States. So there's that. And in here, what I'm working on is criminal defense for BC legal aid. So that's what I'm doing with the Canadian part of my licensing.
talk to you big picture for a second. Mark Carney right now is the best person to be Prime Minister and steer us through a global trade war. That is something that I hear consistently everywhere I go. Even from people who are looking at voting for other parties, they want Mark Carney as a Prime Minister. But the polls are tightening across the country, and we're watching the Bloc Québécois raise in the polls in Quebec, which puts what looked like at first quite a healthy lead in the polls, makes it a little bit tighter. We need to win every possible riding we can. Nothing is guaranteed. In addition to that, the two most recent polls that we've seen put the Liberals ahead of the NDP and have them catching up to the Conservatives. We know that the Liberals can win in this riding, even though it's never been done before. A lot of things have never been done before. So we know the Liberals can win in this riding and could win in this riding. And if so, we could be sending a Liberal to Ottawa. I've spent 27 years.
My name is Glen Staples. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, I used to be like a carpenter at different times and teaching. I taught everything from grade 1 to second year college. Mathematics. Anybody here have trouble with mathematics? Yeah. It's like you need to be a psychologist to teach mathematics because so much of it's just fear and anxiety. But anyway, I'm on the ferry today, and I meet this lady that looks just excessively happy. She's looking out the side. Turns out she went to an art thing here 25. She hasn't been back for 25 years, and she's so happy to come back to Quadra. So I thought, what do you call somebody that has excessive happiness on Quadra Island? Quadratic elation. Sorry, it's the dad joke thing, eh? Why am I bothering? Well, I've been in all these different parties before. I was a candidate for the Green Party. That was the first time I ran. That was the first time they ran anybody. I tried out different parties, and okay.
your decision making? And what are the values which will guide your approach to the major challenges facing our North Island riding in the next decade?
I just want to say that everybody I've met here is good. There are differences. I wish Aaron was here too, because I think maybe he's a good person too. I don't know. I've never met the guy, but the thing is, all you people here, you're here because this is a really important thing. Government is really important. If you don't have government, there's no control on anything. You need government, and it needs to be good. And it's extremely difficult. You know, I see these people get into trouble with in their home, husband, wife, and everything. Well, you're going to have the most conflict with the people you're closest to. We all live in the same country. We're going to have differences of opinion. We have to work them out. But we have to learn that truth springs from argument between friends. You have to be friends with the people you disagree with before one of you or both of you can learn something. You have to debate things out, and that's what is not happening. The court. Okay. Yeah, just today, the health issue keeps coming up all the time, eh? And I'm not an expert on it. To me, it's very complicated. Today, I had a call from a neurologist in Nanaimo that was helping me. So when we were finished with the consultation, I asked him for help. He enlightened me. He's from within that system. So if I happen to be the MP, which is very unlikely, I would be looking for ideas from all the people out here. On each issue, I would be exploring. Thank you.
It's just a really big question to have to answer in just a few seconds. But it's hard to summarize it, but I would say some of my core values are things like fairness, equity, transparency, and kindness. I also want to say that reconciliation is also a core value, but I feel it's a little bit different for me than for someone such as Tanille to speak to that, and it's also sort of more of a goal, so I'm not too sure how to express that in the same way, but I just want you to know that reconciliation is something that is very deeply important to me, and making sure that we continue down the road of reconciliation. But in terms of some of the other core values that I have, I've raised my kids in a community that was built on kindness, not government. We actually not an incorporated community, and so we are all governed by non-for-profit organizations, which is people from all different walks of life, different political views, coming together to run things like our store, our graveyard, our seniors facilities, run our community buildings. And it is done out of kindness, and kindness builds community, and community is what we have. And so I want to take those core values to Ottawa, so we are working with in a way that's transparent, that we are working towards solutions, that we are building bridges and not divisions. And I think this is very contrasts quite sharply to what you see from the Conservative Party, which is all about using fear and conspiracy theory to generate rage and feed off that rage. And we need to stop building that in our communities, and we need to start building much more towards the kindness and the transparency and the fairness and the equity, so everybody has a fair and just existence.
So one really cool thing about the Green Party is that it's not
the greatest disappointments from the Trudeau era that we did not follow through on that. Agree 100%. I have not heard the Prime Minister speak to anything on electoral reform. I can tell you that I will be looking for every opportunity to advance that. I will be working to try and make sure we bring that back again. I feel like what we're living in right now and the tension and the angst that people are feeling right now over strategic voting and split voting, we need to get out of this cycle, and we can only do that through electoral reform. So I will do what I can to advance it through the Liberal Party.
To confirm, would anybody else like to speak to the idea of electoral reform and your position on it? Glen?
Big fan of electoral reform. I used to just love the proportional representation, but now I realize the problem with the traditional proportional representation is the party selects the list of the people that go in. And I would like to have a different system which allows for independence, so whoever you vote for carries those votes and can move them forward to whoever they support, instead of just having the top-down party list. But yeah, we need to get every vote to count, definitely.
Thanks, Glen. And Jessica?
Yeah, I think this election has really highlighted the importance of proportional representation and why we need it, and it's made it very clear how disappointing it is that we don't have it. And the Green Party hears a lot about strategic voting every election, and this one has been particularly difficult. And this riding is so close in so many ways, so it's really hard, and the Green Party will continue to advocate for it. And I also want to empower you to know that if you give your MP, whoever it ends up being, a paper petition, it only needs 25 signatures on it for that petition to be read. And your MP doesn't have to agree with it. But it has to be presented in Parliament. So we have way more power than we give ourselves credit for. And keep pushing, keep that concern out loud, and push and push and push for it, because we cannot have any more of these elections where we're driven apart by the first past the post system and not feeling like our vote is really going to be represented. So I hear you, and we want to continue to push for that, and you can join us in that fight.
Thanks, Jessica. And Tanille, you'd like to make a comment as well?
So agreed, and yes, proportional representation. Like was already said, we wouldn't be in this position without it. We have been hearing a push for the excitement and want for the Liberal Party to have a majority government, and I would offer that that is terrifying to me. I don't think we should have one government that rules them all. I feel like we get our best work done with minority governments, where we have some strong opposition that can be loud and proud and represent, again, that equity piece that we need so desperately. We need that
for this question, we'll start with Jennifer.
So, some of you may know that I spent a lot of my career at Living Ocean Society, salmon farms, and so I fully support the government's decision to transition away from open net cage and go to closed containment. I feel, I know 9 date is disappointing to some people. I'm just gonna let you know there were some reasons that if they did it sooner, it probably could have ended up in court and been challenged, and it could have delayed things further. So there was some administrative reasons why that date was chosen. I think what's really important is that when the government made that announcement, there's going to be a constant struggle with industry if we don't resolve this issue, and they're going to be pushing back against that transition commitment. And so when the government made that announcement, they did not offer anything to industry in terms of clarity of what closed containment means or any funding to try and get there. And that's not really how we treat any industry anywhere in the country when we force change, right? It's just not how we respect people. So what I would be advocating for very much would be to maintain that policy, but ensure the industry gets the support they need in terms of a regulatory framework and funding so that they can have their industry and continue to thrive, as opposed to what they're going to do otherwise, which is be pushing back constantly to have that deadline delayed and weakened, right? So we need to ensure we have both, and that's something that I would be fighting for. And I feel like if there had been a member of parliament from here who was actually in government when that policy was made, we could have advocated for that and be in a better position and be moving towards that transition faster. So this is something that's really important to me, and it's really something that I carry very deeply about and will be advocating for very hard. And in fact, I have already
Thank you, Jennifer. Just to rotate this order of speakers, we'll go to Tanille next, if that's okay. Tanille, are you open?
Keeping us on our toes. Yeah, so NDP is definitely behind keeping the fish in the water, getting the fish farms out of the water. There is still a court challenge at play. I don't know if Jessica knows more about this than I do. That is challenging the research and the potential overstepping of the DFO. So I am very curious as to where that's sitting and what's going to happen with that and how that's going to impact decision making. We do need to ensure that all of these jobs are transferable in a phenomenal way. We have great opportunities in North Island, Powell River for renewable energy, whether that's tidal or solar or wind. We have some phenomenal opportunities for expanding our kelp industry into production and manufacturing. And I have spoken with, we have 2 on the land fish farms in our riding area, and I have spoken with one of them about, hey, is it at all possible to combine like the production and manufacturing of kelp products in combination with an on the land fish farm? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Kelp loves to grow in the byproduct of fish. So if you can filter out that byproduct and you can grow that kelp, you can use it for clothes, you can use it for renewable bags, you can plant it in the ocean, it brings down the ocean's temperature, it creates new habitats, you can eat it, it's a carbon sucker. It's an amazing plant, and we are positioned perfectly to be a champion in that space.
Thank you, Tanille. Jessica, are you?
So the short answer, yes. The short answer to your question is yes, absolutely. We support the fish farms getting out as quickly as possible and staying out of the water. We know, all of us, that where we have had the Atlantic salmon removed from our Pacific Ocean, the wild salmon have come back and have flourished, and we have the evidence, so we need to commit to that, and the Green Party is absolutely committed to that. And I want to just mention one kind of piece of this is that people aren't trusting science, and a problem is because everybody can buy their own scientist. In the law, everybody gets their own expert, and you pay them to say what you want them to say, and then that's the report, right? So we need to be able to trust the science. We need unbiased scientists who are doing the work, and we're publishing the work, and they're not told what their results have to be, so that we can trust what we're told more. People lost a lot of faith in this in data because of how it's been used to manipulate us, and that's because we had, under the Conservative government, there were gags on biologists who were doing this. They couldn't talk about their research. We need to keep science open and flourishing, and we can find really skilled scientists to do the work that we know will prove what we see, but we have to be able to trust what we're reading and know that it's not a corporation's results that we're reading about.
Thank you. And then Glen.
Yeah, personally, I'm against the open net fish farming, but I'm kind of curious if there are people here. How many people here are against open net fish farming? Okay, are there any people that are in favor of open net fish farming? Oh, okay. Well, that would make it easy if that represented the public. I seem to have heard in other areas, so that there are some people that feel very strongly about keeping them. Maybe I'm wrong there. Personally, I would get rid of them, but you can't. Jennifer already alluded to Clackwood Sound, and I was involved with that issue before even Mears Island. And I know that a lot of the loggers were on our side before it went nuts. And I could tell you the whole story. I don't have enough time, but by the end of it, I know I picked up hitchhikers that were going out there for the protests. They were teenagers from Vancouver, and they would not use toothpicks because it was the flesh of a dead tree. And we ended up alienating the whole forest industry. Sometimes you get in politics what you want, sometimes you get the opposite if you push too hard. So you have to be careful.
Thanks, Glen. All right, I'll just go to a previously submitted question for the next one. So this question is, so as we've seen, certainly there's some questions with the economy right now, and specifically this question says, what specific support will your party offer to help rural small businesses recover and thrive, particularly those in the tourism trades and the resource-based sectors? And for this one, I think we'll start with Jessica.
Particularly those in the...
So particularly those that work in the tourism, trades, and the resource-based sectors.
Okay, thank you. Small businesses employ more than 60% of our people, and they need to be supported. We need to make sure, the Greens have already proposed legislation, it hasn't been passed yet, but have been proposing legislation that considers the effect on small businesses and enterprises with every piece of legislation. How is this going to affect our small businesses every single time? So we need to be considering that, and we need to make sure that we're investing in those businesses and making it easier for them to operate. We can simplify the tax code as one thing to make it so that they're not having to figure out all these odd, strange things that haven't been relevant for a while. That would be helpful, and we can make sure that we are investing in our communities. Our tax plan also, by lowering, by making it so that there's no federal income tax on income below $40,000, provides instant relief to those who need it the most, and they can spend more. They have more money in their pockets to spend on our local economies and keep lifting these economies up. So this can be attacked from multiple different angles, and we can definitely help small businesses in this riding.
Thank you, Jessica. And Glen, we'll go to you second.
Random night, yeah. Yeah, I guess this is why you see I'm on the right side of the stage here, because I'm kind of sympathetic to the right wings on some issues and the left wing on others. On this issue, I kind of like Jessica's comments about tweaking the taxation system, but I just love small business and the entrepreneurship, and I honestly believe that there's more energy for change within those people that do those businesses than there is from top-down government. And so I would rely more on I wouldn't want to be handing out all kinds of grants and everything like that. Tweaking the taxation system, that's okay. But really, those are the people that need to. Going to the North Island yesterday, I was just impressed with how many different little businesses I passed on the way up there. And I don't know on Quadra what the situation is, but those people that we're short of the entrepreneurship now. We need more people that are out there starting businesses.
And then we'll go to Tanille next.
So something that I've heard from the tourism industry is the need for the federal government to actually care about it. Our tourism industry feels very left out of a lot of conversations, of a lot of dialogue, and that they don't feel like they see themselves anywhere in the federal government, which was really sad, honestly, for me to hear and kind of get that feedback from industry. So I would love to see the tourism industry be invited to the table to come have a conversation about what does that look like for you? What kind of support do you want to see from the federal government? How do you want your federal government to work with your province, which is where a lot of the tourism industry tables sit, is provincially. So I would love to see that specific to the tourism industry and leaning into ecotourism. How can we enable that as the front and foremost of tourism? Because especially that's what we see in rural and remote communities, is leaning into ecotourism. And the other piece about small businesses, I love small businesses. I grew up under a mom that owned a small business. My mom owned a Hallmark store in Powell River. I really want to hear from small businesses what exactly it is that they want to see from the federal government. I went to and visited a bunch of small businesses here, and they were like, well, you came and you said hi, I haven't seen anyone else. And I was like, well, it's heartwarming but also concerning at the same time. There's so many different types of small businesses that, again, we can't be blanketing and coming up with a one rule for it all. We need the individuality to come forward.
Thanks, Tanille. And then Jennifer.
Yeah, so I don't think I have to stress the value of small businesses, because my colleagues up here have made that very clear and how important they are. So there's a couple things that we've already committed to, and a couple other things that I'd like to work towards. So first of all, we've made a commitment around things like AI infrastructure. At first, I didn't quite understand what it meant for AI infrastructure, right? Because that did not sound like a small business thing for me. But when I started to really look into it, it really increases the capacity for small businesses to be doing things like websites and research, and being able to sell their products online and be able to administer things in a much easier way. And to do that, in order to use that new skill that's developing, we have to have infrastructure in Canada to be able to support it. So we've committed to making that and building that, so it will eventually become a service that you guys can use better for small businesses. The other is we've committed to a rural transit system, which I think would be really helpful. I know when I was in Gold River, they don't have a grocery store. So simple things like, can we move people around more so they can access some of the small businesses? But I think one of the things that I really want to look at, and this is something I would be advocating for, is funding. I do believe that funding is really important to help get companies off the ground. Whether it's a small business that you're running or something a little bit bigger like a tourism facility. And I want to look at trying to find that funding and putting it into programs that already exist, so it's not a higher administrative burden to small businesses. So if you're applying...
Thank you, Jennifer. Any more questions from the floor at all?
This question is for the Liberal candidate specifically. Oh, sorry about that. The Liberal government has had a definite history of subsidizing the fossil fuel industry and spent $4.8 billion purchasing the Trans Mountain Pipeline. How do you see that squaring with the need to combat climate change?
Great question. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Canada was the first country in the G20, I believe, to phase out what's called inefficient fossil fuels. There are some exceptions to that. If there are subsidies still provided, for example, if there's an Indigenous community that would like to invest in a project so that they can have equity and the revenue can stay in communities such as the Cedar LNG project. There are still subsidies provided for if it's essential energy for rural and remote communities. There's still funding provided for emergency needs. So if it's something where the ability to access fossil fuels is required in case of emergency. So there are a few exceptions to that, but we were one of the first countries in the G20 to phase out fossil fuels. But those are the inefficient fossil fuels. Those are not the what we call public finance, which is things like the Business Development Corporation, Export Development Corporation. We have made a commitment to phase out the fossil fuels for those. It was in development when the RIT was dropped, so I am planning when I am back in Ottawa, because sorry, I've been working in Ottawa for the past couple of years, but if I go back as an MP, to be championing that we get it out of the public finance. And that's where you start to see the major investments, things like the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So we would be really looking at getting the finance out of that for fossil fuels as well.
Would any other candidate like to comment on the question? Yeah, Tanille was noting first.
Absolutely committed to ending fossil fuel subsidies across the board. And the plan would be, because then you would have all of this new money that you're not subsidizing billion-dollar profits on with, is to reinvest that into renewable energy projects. So like the wind farm that the Wheel Foundation is finishing their environmental assessment on in Seaward. If there's anyone, I know Texada Island's interested in tidal energy. There's different communities that are interested in looking at solar fields so that they can run their communities on solar. All sorts of really amazing projects like that to get us away from that fossil fuel industry and get us well in the hand of renewable energy, which we are just amazingly positioned to do in North Island, Powell River.
And Glen, you
Totally in favor of stopping all funding for fossil fuels. The one proviso, I mean, I've been working on that issue since I had it on my 84 literature. It's been a concern for me big time. But the thing is, you have to remember there's a whole lot of people whose jobs depend on that industry. If we go too far, we get what just happened. The Axe the Tax movement, it's how Pierre Poilievre. So I did not agree with a lot of what Justin Trudeau did. But the one great thing he did was that carbon tax. That's the best way to deal with it, because you can gradually get people weaned off of it. But it turned out that was the best issue Pierre had to gain power, because there's so many people depending on that. We all burn fossil fuels. It's hard to make that transition. We need to make friends with the people in the oil industry to bring them on side. We can't, if we hate everybody in that business, it's just going to polarize, and we're going to end up like the logging trucks that covered the lawn of the legislature. Now they hate environmentalists. So we have to. It's a difficult issue, but I agree. We need to stop those subsidies, but we've got to work it. They're all Canadians.
Thanks, Glen. And then Jessica. Yeah.
So absolutely, we need to end the fossil fuel subsidies. A lot of that money is going to American corporations. It's not even helping Canadians. So we need to end them, and we need to go further. We need to all really work on our reliance on the fossil fuel industry in general. And the Green Party would cancel all new pipelines and oil exploration projects. We'd end federal fossil fuel leases and retire existing licenses, ban new offshore oil and gas. You can imagine there's a lot in our platform about what we're doing with the fossil fuel industry. But I want to pick up on what Glen said, and Jennifer also touched on it in talking about the fish farms. It's not going to work if we can't make it so that people continue to have jobs. If people are afraid of losing their jobs, they're going to act out of fear, and we see what happens when we act out of fear. Our brain short circuits. It literally short circuits, and we don't make smart decisions. So we need to address that fear and let people know we are here for you. You are not going. You might lose this job, but you're not going to be unemployed. We will still find a job for you, and if you need training, we will provide you for the training, and we'll pay you through your training. We need your skills. People who work in the oil fields, their skills can be used, transition to looking for geothermal energy, like using those wells for geothermal energy instead. So there are solutions to this, and nobody will be left behind. We have the money to pay for the fossil fuels. We have the money to leave it in the ground.
Thanks. Another one from the floor?
question that I've been asked a few times by some of my friends who are conservative supporters as they're wavering on their vote with the current situation. How will your party fix the poorly rolled out gun laws that have left many legal gun owners in limbo while doing very little to stop the flow of illegal firearms into our communities? And that's for all candidates.
Okay, for that one, we'll start with Tanille.
Felt like I felt that coming from you. We're fully committed to going to the faucet and turning it off. So hiring at least 1,000 more border guards to really stop it where it's coming in. So if you're just going to focus on removing firearms that are already in the hands of people in Canada, you're not turning the faucet off. There are arms coming across our border over and over and over and over again, and we have to go to the source and prevent it from even coming across the border in the first place. So that's honestly where our focus is on our platform, is that border security, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and we're stopping those guns from even entering our country in the first place.
Thanks, Tanille. And then we'll head to Jessica next.
So I come at the gun question from a bit of a different angle because I lived in the United States for a long time, where there are more guns than people, and there's a real problem, and it is terrifying. I have witnessed, I was running one day and heard somebody emptying a clip into what ended up being 4 people a block away. My husband witnessed a murder while he was out eating dinner. Every night we told our kids, don't worry, it's just fireworks. It got really hard. And so there is a difference between Canada and the United States, and we have guns here and there's a different culture. But I do come at it with that baggage, I guess I'll say, that experience of what it means when you have uncontrolled guns. And it's scary, and we don't want that here. We want our schools to stay safe. We want to feel safe and just have regular road rage incidents where we give somebody the finger and you're not like, what's going to happen to me? And you can't have that in the States. So we need to make it fair, though, for hunters who have guns legally, and they love. My son loves shooting. He's really good at shooting, and there is a legal use for gun and an illegal use, and we need to find a better solution, because you're right, it was poorly rolled out, and it left a lot of people kind of high and dry. So we can go back to the table and rework it and find what are the problems and what are the best solutions to those problems, and how can we implement them quickly and safely to keep Canada safe, but to not infringe on others' rights.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessica. And then we'll go to Glen next.
Just out of curiosity, it's so nice to hear that somebody here has friends that are conservative. That's amazing. Way to go. No, seriously. I mean, that's what I think. We should all have friends that are have different opinions. Incidentally, do you have guns yourself? You don't have to answer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been using guns since I was a kid growing up on the farm. I haven't used them much lately, but apparently there's a country where you're required to have a gun, but they don't have any problems with it's the people and the attitude of the American. Sorry, but it's a bit of a stereotype, but they have a serious problem with gun issues there, and it's the attitude that they have that is the problem, and the criminal element in it. I like what Tanille said about getting more controls on the border to bring in the illegal guns, but if you live out in the bush or you're on a farm, it's a tool that you use, and hopefully not for just killing somebody in a road rage incident, right? But the bear that's attacking your chickens or whatever. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. And then Jennifer.
So I have some personal experiences growing up in Toronto, obviously not in a gun culture at all. My family did not hunt or anything, and I was terrified of them. And then I moved to coastal BC, living in a small community where people did hunt. And in about, I think it was 2020, I actually took up hunting myself. And I realized, when you actually learn how to use these properly, this is not scary. And I really enjoy when we go hunting every fall. So, But in my opening statement, I talked about that tension that exists when you develop public policy, and the tension in this one is how do we ensure public safety, and how do we also ensure that people can continue to use their guns. And I just want to say that I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when there were some amendments made to the gun law, and it was the Liberal government, and we messed up. We messed up badly, and we brought in some stuff that was not thinking about people in rural communities. And this is one of the reasons why I think we need to have a member of parliament from a rural community who's in there and can actually express that. And so many of the MPs come from the urban area, and so they're coming at it from the fear perspective, and they're not coming at it from the perspective of the hunters. So I would work very hard to make sure we had a good plan, and we could do it properly that respected both sides.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Is there any other questions from the floor at all?
This question is specifically for Jessica, but I hope everybody else will answer too. In fact, it was triggered by this little slip of paper that I picked up on your desk, climate crisis. Setting stringent science-based emission targets. Now, everybody's talked about oil and gas. My specific question is about the coal industry in BC and shipment of coal out of Vancouver, which is one of the major products that is shipped out of Vancouver, including transshipment of U.S. coal out of Point Roberts. So you could comment on that, please.
Thanks for the question. We have to get away from coal. It's filthy. We have better choices to use, and it's dirty by looking at it. It's just dirty. So we have to get away from it. We have to use cleaner energy, and nobody ever complains that there was too much sunshine or there was a wind spill. There's not. There are wind incidents, but they're not spilling out of the air. So we can highlight and put money into these renewable sources of energy, and we need to get away from our American trade with the coal corporations and focus on what's going to help Canadians and what's going to keep the environment cleaner, and that is renewable sources of energy. So we, like Tanille had mentioned earlier, tidal, wind, solar, there are lots of better things that we could be doing, and we need to stop using these finite sources that are only polluting, and then we're cleaning up after the polluters because the corporations who make the money off of destroying our pristine, beautiful world that we're living in just leave and leave us with a mess to clean up. So we need to keep holding the corporations responsible, and we need to transition to renewables as soon as possible across the board.
Thank you, Jessica. And anybody else that would like to comment on that? Would you like to make a comment?
I don't really have much to say. Just wanted to let everyone know that I agree with Jessica. We're just so lucky to live where we live and really truly have the opportunities that we have to be leaders in renewable energy, and we just need the political will to make it happen. Often it's asked, well, why don't we do it then? It's because the leaders of the country have not put that investment in the forefront. It's an active choice. So we really, really, really need to focus on this, especially for North Island, Powell River, especially with how much our different industries have suffered and how many job losses we have had. 3,000 people used to live in Tassus when the mill was, going hard, and now there's 300. We can replace all those jobs with phenomenal renewable energy jobs, and it would just be really exciting to do that work in North Island, Powell River, and be really proud of it.
Thanks, Tanille. Jennifer?
So totally agree with clean energy here, but I think the question was focusing more on the coal export ban. And so the Liberal government did commit to stopping the export of thermal coal through the Port of Vancouver. There was a lot of research done into how existing laws, such as export permits and CEPA, could be used to make that happen. And there was, I don't want to bore you all with a real policy in our conversation, but it was inadequate and we could not make it work. The NDP did propose a private member's bill to ban the export of thermal coal. Unfortunately, it wasn't prioritized, but that could have been a real opportunity. And I really liked that piece of legislation that was put forward. It had some real opportunity to it. So I think if I were elected, I would be looking at trying to put forward some legislation, because I think the only other way that we can truly stop the export of it is through legislation. Just in Canada alone, we have already banned, we are already transitioning away from thermal coal to electricity, so we will not, by 2035, we won't have any more electricity that's powered with unabated thermal coal.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Glen.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started in the environmental movement. I started an environmental group a long time ago, early 80s, against the Hat Creek project. BC Hydro was called BC Hydro because they got their electricity from hydroelectric plants. But they were going to dig up coal in Hat Creek and use it to make electricity. And when I started that group, everybody thought I was totally bananas because everybody was drooling over the money that was going to come in. But the social credit government ended up stopping that project. And nobody seemed to get hurt too much by canceling it. I would say one thing, the most important part of it is reducing consumption. That's where if you go and you jump on a jet plane and fly around the world to protest fossil fuel consumption, sorry, that's not going to help. You know, it's our individual consumption that drives the whole thing. So we need to reduce our energy consumption as the number one thing. And coal is the worst, the dirtiest way to make it. But there's still, I think China is still, a few years ago, they were still building one coal-fired generator a week. I think they've cut back on it now. They're into more renewables. But yeah, coal is the dirtiest fossil fuel that they have.
Thanks, Glen. All right. Another question.
As a biologist, I feel really concerned about how the U.S. administration has overturned species at risk legislation and opened up public lands to resource extraction. And it's very clear that the Conservatives have made it very clear that they are going to get rid of those pesky environmental assessments that are used in order to lift the cap on resource extraction. And I understand that the environment always seems to get, hit by the bus when it comes to putting people first. But I find it really concerning that, of course, we're going into this thing where we're trying to take Canada is wanting to draw away from the U.S. So we have to take care of our own resource extraction. So we also have to make sure that we're able to pay for it. But my question is that the Liberals haven't clarified their position on what if they're going to do the environment.
So the Conservatives call it C-69, which is the name of the legislation when it was going through the House. We call it the Impact Assessment Act because that's how it's actually implemented. And Mark Carney has committed to continuing the Impact Assessment Act as it stands. As you may know, it was challenged in court at one point by Alberta, but anyhow, as it stands, we are continuing to follow through on that. And so any project that goes through an impact assessment, which looks at species at risk legislation and the Fisheries Act, and it assesses projects based on those pieces, and others as well, but those are two fundamental pieces. Also requiring consultation with First Nations and consultation with the provinces as well. And he is committed wholeheartedly to that and has not walked back at all any of the work that needs to be done on that. And as you know, we would have liked to have been a little bit stronger in our impact assessment, but it was challenged in court, and it was considered that we encroached too much on provincial jurisdiction, and so we had to walk our legislation back a bit, which was really disappointing because it was, I thought, a more powerful tool at that time. But yes, we are fully committed to staying the course on the work that we are doing, unlike the Conservatives that want to get rid of it.
Would any other candidate like to comment on that? Jessica?
Yep. So for the first part of your comment about biodiversity conservation, we are also committed to the 30 by 30 and expanding that to 50% by 2050 through protected areas, habitat restoration, and conservation agreements with provinces and Indigenous nations. With regard to assessments, we would also restore the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act to its pre-2012 standards to ensure robust science-based environmental reviews and making sure we're getting that information that we need when we have projects going through. So yes to both things. They're so important, and the Green Party is 100% behind making sure that we're getting the information that we need and protecting the biodiversity and natural beauty and natural land that we have, and water, obviously, with everything. So absolutely, great question.
Anybody else? Glen?
Definitely I would be on the side of strong environmental regulations. But again, I want to emphasize that there's a whole lot of people out there that are really upset at the environmental movement. And we need to get across to those people without making them enemies, without making them evil. We have to bring them onto the side of what I would call enlightenment. The other thing I would say is, you know, I was born in 1950. I know it's a long time ago, but 1950 there were 2.5 billion people on the planet. Now there's over 8 billion. That's not the bad news for the environment. The bad news is the per capita, the population went up more than threefold. The bad news is the per capita consumption has gone up even more than threefold. We still have a lot of the world that still are waiting to get everybody into an automobile, everybody into jet travel. So we have to work on reducing consumption. Save your money, save the planet.
Thanks, Ben. And Tanille, would you like to also comment?
So much has already been said. We have no intentions of walking back any legislation or removing any environmental assessments. One conversation that I got to have before I got here is in collaboration with this. I mean, we do these assessments in order to protect the environment that's already there, but a sandwich of that is enabling that protection that we need to do to continue to grow whatever it is we're trying to protect. So right now, a lot of our trigger points for, that species is in danger are too late in the game. By the time you're able to respond and reinvigorate that species, it's gone. So in collaboration with these assessments, where things are looking and leaning into that risk zone, we need to do a way better job there. We need to be able to operationalize the saving and preserving of these species well before they're hitting that extinction timeline. So we need to be doing both things. Yes, assess for safety and security of our environment and our species, but also we need to be enabling saving and preserving those species way further in advance than we are right now.
Thanks, Tanille. Next question.
First, thank you to all the candidates for being here tonight. I just had a quick question. Crime and drug use are a big issue in our riding. The Conservatives have made their stance really clear. Wanted to know your guys' opinions and how you would tackle these issues if you were elected MP in Ottawa. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. For this one, we'll start with Tanille.
Super big question, really hard to answer in 90 seconds, but they don't go hand in hand, so they can't be approached in the exact same way. So we have a lot of trauma that's riddled through our communities, and a lot of the time that trauma shows up in addiction, that is being targeted by the opiate crisis right now, and solutioning that is one challenge. We need a better continuum of care. We need to stop the gaps between detox and treatment, and the gaps between treatment and second stage housing. We need to enable that through the provinces in a good way. We need to rebuild accountability into the funding structures on how the federal government funds provinces, instead of just writing a check and saying, okay, that's you go do that, because it's not working right now. I wholeheartedly disagree with the conservative approach of locking people up for a decade at a time. We suck at rehabilitation. We are horrid at rehabilitation. We need to get better at rehabilitating people into community in a really good way, so that they can have some dignity and enter into the workforce and gain that level of independence and kind of sovereignty over themselves as a person, so that they can start on a fresh journey in whatever life they want that to look like for themselves. We can't just be locking people up for decades and decades, and what they get out of after 10 years, and we still are horrible at rehabilitation. Now we just have someone that's been in custody for that long, that has arguably got no support, no rehabilitative measures, and we're putting them back where? Onto the street? We didn't give them a house. So we need to get way better at rehabilitation if we're going to start changing how long people are in custody.
Thank you, Tanille. And then we'll move to Jessica.
Yeah, so I'll just echo one of the things that Tanille said, which is that crime and drug use are two different problems. They don't necessarily go hand in hand, but they do have some common factors. And I think part of that is despair and untreated mental health issues. And so we need to look at how can we provide people the support that they need in the mental health area. And we need more mental health providers. We need to make sure that their mental health is included in our universal healthcare system. So those are both things that the Greens advocate for and would push for in Ottawa, to make sure that first of all, we need more mental health practitioners. We need to then make those people available to people who need it most. We need to have them in prisons and in schools and in our communities, and they need to be free. So even if they're there, it's not helpful if you can't afford it. So they need to be part of our universal healthcare system, and we advocate for that. Prisons aren't the answer to what the Conservatives are suggesting. I work in the prison field. It's not nice, and it doesn't make people better humans. It doesn't help them with the issues that they have. It's not the right solution, and also they're really, really expensive. So we would be paying for that as well. We can pay to give people dignity, give them a dignified existence, and help them with the problems that they're experiencing, working through their trauma, working with mental health issues, and giving them the support that they need. So those are the big parts of that answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Glen, would you like to speak to the question as well?
Yeah, this is, please try to refrain from throwing things at me when I tell you that I am not in favor of this harm reduction approach. It does not seem to be working. And just think of somebody that's an alcoholic, and so your solution is to say, oh, here's some clean glasses, make sure you have clean glass, and oh, here's a safe place for you to drink, and oh, you don't have any alcohol? Here's some alcohol. Yeah. I'm sorry, it doesn't work, and we can see that in the statistics. The people that push that keep saying it's working. Yeah, it works in the short term for this one individual. It keeps them from dying, but in the long run, it's actually encouraging, and that's why I'm on the right side of the stage here. You see?
Thanks, Glen. Jennifer.
So one of the most profound parts of this past month being on the campaign trail has been the mums and grandmothers who approached me to talk about their sons and grandchildren who passed as a result of addiction issues, and it's been heartbreaking. And I think if anyone thinks that there's a silver bullet to cure this, they don't understand the depth of the issue. And I think Tanille summarized it quite well, the suite of approaches that need to be done, and we have not delivered on that so far. We focused on some parts of it, like safe supply, and we have failed in other parts of it and definitely needs to be addressed. A lot of this is provincial jurisdiction, so the question is, how can the federal government step in and help? A couple things that we are committed to doing is supportive housing. In addition to the housing plan that we have, specifically carving some out for supportive housing. And that can be for people who are just really struggling economically and people who are struggling from mental health and addiction issues. So really giving people a roof over their head is a big way to help. We also want to look at, we've also committed to a program that helps youth as they're growing up and dealing with some issues, getting the support early, so early intervention to try and help. So those are just some of the ways the federal government can step in. But I think we also need to look at ensuring that people are safe, and because people should feel safe in their community. And so we are looking at reviewing the criminal code so that people who are repeat offenders are not getting out as easily on bail, and so that we're ensuring that the streets are also safe for people.
Thank you, Jennifer. Take the next question from the floor.
Hi, this is a question to all of you, and I think it's a social justice question and economic. So I feel that we should strive to end poverty and not see it as an inevitable part of our economy, not only because people are suffering, we should want to end that suffering, and we should want to end this injustice, but also because a whole segment of the population, their talents and contributions are not being used, so that's a waste. And also because poverty is very, am I done? Right, I'll hurry up. Wow, that was fast. Also because it's very expensive. And so I would like to ask you about the whole idea of a guaranteed annual income, because this country needs to be more productive, and we are wasting a lot of money on poverty.
Okay, thanks for the question. We'll start with Glen for this one. Glen?
Yeah, I'm afraid this is another issue where I'm going to be a little on the right-hand side of this issue here, because I'm not a big fan of handouts, guaranteed annual income. I know that was a big proposal 3 years ago, I think, by the Green Party. What I would do is, do you know in 1944, the maximum tax rate was 94%. Now it's down to 33%. That trickle-down economics. Let the rich get wealthy and they'll make everybody else wealthy. Doesn't work. It trickles up, not down. They need to tax. Do you know, if you're making a minimum wage, you're still paying income tax. You need that income, and you're taxing it away. They should be reducing the taxes for the people that are poor and the people that are rich. And even 1944, the rich were not rich like today's rich. Today's rich are obscenely rich, and they're doing nothing. They should be paying the taxes, all of the taxes. But if you want to eat, you should work.
Thanks, Glen. Jennifer?
So I don't want to get ahead of the Prime Minister and talk about whether we're committed to universal guaranteed income or not. But I do agree with the principle of reducing poverty. And one thing we've done is lift 450,000 kids out of poverty through the child benefit program, which has been remarkable. And I want to see more programs like that developed so that we are helping people get out of poverty. I think that's really important. But I think there's also a bigger question around the economy. Why are people in poverty? Why are there not jobs, good paying jobs that they can access? Why is this happening? And that is a structural change in how we run our economy. And what I really like about the platform that Mark Carney has put out is it really looks at sort of spending less on government but investing more in the economy. So it's like a good business plan for the country for us to generate more jobs, more opportunities, but also nested within that is the core values that we have as a community, which are the social programs, we have the dental, the daycare, all those programs are continued to be included in it. So I think one of the things we really need to look forward as we move forward in this sort of new era we're going into is, can we design an economy so that those jobs and opportunities are there and we have far less poverty? And then do we have the social programs to catch those people that have not succeeded and benefited from that opportunity? And hopefully that would address the problem.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jessica.
Yes, we support a guaranteed livable income, like Glenn said. We do believe in that. It is unconscionable that in this country that is so wealthy and we have so much, there's still so much poverty. And you can't see it all the time. There are kids who come to the Brooklyn Elementary and they're hungry and they don't look like it, but we make sure that there's food for them. So it's not always even visible, but that there is poverty at all is unconscionable. The top 1% of Canadian earners own 26% of our wealth. That is unconscionable. There shouldn't be this gross and growing wealth disparity in our country where so much is concentrated in so few people at the very top. We need a guaranteed livable income to make sure that everybody has a baseline level of dignity and can afford housing and food and the basic things that they need. And we can adjust this for the different areas that we have. You need more to live in the far north than you need here. You need more to live here than you need in Saskatchewan. So we need to be thinking about all these things, and we have enough in this country to make sure that everybody can live a dignified life. We need to find ways to support them to do that.
Thank you, Jessica. And Tanille.
So absolutely yes, and poverty. Part of the way we want to try to work towards that is equitable taxation. There's no reason why people that are making multi-million dollars a year, $1 billion a year aren't being taxed in an equitable way so that we can implement a lot of these strategies and social supports. We have committed to raising the guaranteed income supplements for seniors and our persons with disabilities up over the poverty line to make sure that we can get those people out of poverty. We're committed to removing the GST off of your grocery essentials to help bring costs down for everyone, and we're also committed to removing the GST off of your cell phone bill, off of your home heating bill, these bills that come in at hundreds of dollars every month. We want to take that off, and I think it's important to think about what programs need to sit nationally to do their best work. I know our Jennifer offered the commitment of staying the course with $10 a day daycare and the diabetes coverage and the dental care, but we have heard that there's not as much interest in expanding the National Pharmacare program, which is huge for people. Being able to supplement the cost of your medications is huge for people. Arguably, we've done a great job in BC at finding a baseline for that through First Nations Health Authority with our Plan W plan. I would love to see that Plan W plan raised up nationally so that everyone can have access to those baseline prescriptions for free.
Thank you, Tanille. Next question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to our small but mighty little island over here, Quadra. And Sarah, nice to see you up there at the podium. Very nice treat. My question is healthcare. Nice segue, Tanille, into this question. But really, what it is for me working in the industry is a better understanding of maybe it's your top 3 priorities in healthcare. That's a tricky one. In particular, related to the lack of providers, practitioners during this healthcare crisis that we're experiencing. Many of our islanders are well aware of the lack of docs on the 2 that we do have. They're aging and barely hanging in there for us, kind of current settings. So I'm just wondering, top 3 priorities and also just that one particular piece of our massive lack of providers in our communities. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. We'll start this one with Jennifer.
Yeah, so this is a major issue, and couple things that we're committed to doing. So first of all, getting more healthcare providers here is really key. One is increasing the medical spaces in medical schools and for residency, so we can be training more doctors at home. Streamlining the credentials so that we can, for foreign healthcare workers, so we can get them working when they arrive here, recruiting more healthcare workers from overseas, and breaking down the interprovincial trade barriers. So those are just some of the things the federal government can do to try and increase the number of healthcare providers we have here. But we're also committed to a new practice fund. So providing some funding so that doctors can set up clinics in communities like ours. Like, I don't have a doctor very often in Sointula, I can guarantee you that. And so can we provide that support so it's easier for doctors to set up more facilities? And also we've also committed to a $4 billion fund for infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it can range from a new MRI machine to a new hospital. So really investing heavily in the buildings and the instruments that doctors need to be able to, and healthcare providers need to be able to do their job properly. And I hope that when those facilities exist in more rural communities, it also attracts doctors because the hospitals are better, right? So can we have the more MRIs and things like that in our rural communities?
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll move on to Tanille.
This is one of those questions where I have too much information in my head. So I've been working in healthcare the last 7.5 years. The last 3.5 years has been the First Nations Health Authority, bringing primary care closer to home for the 50 First Nations on Vancouver Island, and done lots of great work with our local healthcare champions. A lot of NDP promises are very similar to Liberal promises as far as increasing residency seats, national credentialing for physicians, expediting nursing credentials coming out of the United States and internationally, because nursing is the backbone of primary care. As far as healthcare, as a First Nations person, my healthcare does sit federally. I've witnessed inequitable funding into First Nations Health Authority and the asks of First Nations Health Authority to do massive amounts of work for very little funding in comparison to our island health partners. So I would want to make sure that that funding is equitable. It is very challenging to see $2.2 million worth of capital funding go through island health for projects, and then FNHA trying to build the same projects in different locations and having no capital funding attached to them. It's very inequitable, and arguably the better care we can take care of communities at home, in their home community, the natural relief that we will feel on the challenges within our emergency rooms, at our hospitals, our walk-in clinics that no longer exist, all of these things. So I would absolutely be a champion in that healthcare space and would love to get into the federal government and do some great work in partnership with our provinces.
Thank you, Tanille. And Jessica.
This is one of the questions that we usually have gotten at every single one, and it's usually like, yeah, what she said and, or yeah, what she said but. So all of these ideas, it's hard to go third when you're in this line because it's already mostly been said. So for how to get more doctors, we all pretty much line up the same way. And it's not limited to doctors. Again, nurses, nurse practitioners, we can expand telemedicine, we can look more at Indigenous and community-led healing and other ways of approaching the problem that we have, which is a serious one. It is important to remember, and Jennifer usually says more about this, that this is that healthcare often delivery is quite a provincial thing. And the federal government supports it with money, is what it boils down to. So we can help by tracking what that money is doing more closely and having accountability measures so that we know it's doing what it's supposed to. I was in Port Alice a couple weeks ago and spoke with a nurse who said she'd recruited herself, so that something's not working in the situation. So we need to make sure that we're tracking it more closely. We'd also want to include, I think it's been said, pharmacare in our universal health care, and as I mentioned earlier, mental health care should be included, and we can expand the dental program as well. So there are some ways that we want to expand universal health care, and we need to also be more careful about making sure our federal dollars are actually showing results in our healthcare at the provincial level.
Thank you, Jessica. And Glen.
Yeah, complex problem, and I don't know much about the details. I was asking this neurologist that I was talking to today, and he was talking about rationalizing. He knew lots of details about the problem in the bureaucracy. And I asked him, well, what are you talking about rationalizing? Part of it was, he agreed with me that there's a kind of an infinite amount of healthcare available, which we can't supply everything to everyone. When I was in Saskatchewan, where universal healthcare started, and it was 15% of the provincial budget when it started. Education was 20%. And it now over 50% in every province, the last time I checked. And it's growing. They can't provide all the healthcare that's available scientifically for everybody. And it's growing exponentially. So that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And he was talking about, I guess it's kind of like a triage system for the bigger picture. Like what can we provide and what can we not provide? But the thing on the doctors, it's interesting. Do you know in Nanaimo they're trying to start a heart clinic? What's it called? Whatever it's called, for heart problems. There's a lobby from Victoria trying to prevent it. The people that are doing the work in Victoria don't want to lose that business. So they're lobbying the authorities to prevent this clinic from starting in Nanaimo.
Thank you, Glen. We've got time for one more question. You're the last one.
Well, this might be appropriate. With respect to all the candidates, and thank you all for coming. This question is for Tanille and Jennifer. It's about the elephant not in the room. Can one of you beat Aaron? How and how do we vote? You're all excellent candidates compared to the other. What do we do?
Okay. I guess we'll start with Jennifer for that one.
I think the elephant's very much in the room on that one. I don't think either one of us are going to step down, and I think I know I get asked, sometimes in various sort of tones, to do that, and it's not going to happen. And we represent different parties, and we have different beliefs and different values. And I don't want to speak on Tanille's behalf there, but I'm not going to, because I believe that the best prime minister to have is Mark Carney, and the best way for this riding to be represented is to have a seat at the table in a Mark Carney government. The polls that we've been looking at, that we've been sharing, show the Liberals in the lead. I know there's polls that other people share that show it differently. My recommendation is, we don't know how this poll is going to go, or this election's going to go. It's unclear, and no poll is going to provide the certainty that people are looking for. And I think ultimately you need to vote for who you want to vote for. And if you want Mark Carney as the Prime Minister, you should vote Liberal. And if you want to have an MP who has a seat at the table, vote Liberal. And that's really all we can say, because we're here, and we are running hard, and we have our values, and we really want to convince you that this is the right way to go. But ultimately it comes down to you guys to make that decision.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Tanille.
Some of this is probably going to come out of my closing, so maybe I'll rewrite that later. The polls that are being referenced are mainstream polls. They're owned, operated, funded by conservative pollsters. There is nothing that Conservatives would love you to understand more or think more that maybe the Liberal Party has a chance in North Island Powell River. You haven't seen Carney here. Johnston never visited. It's not a thing. Liberals don't win here. They haven't won since 1974. And arguably, this election is far more than sometimes what I feel some of our colleagues alluded to me. This election threatens the livelihood of myself as an Indigenous person, my children, my family, our 2S LGBTQ people and how they define themselves as humans, our women's right to choose. We could get walked back hundreds of years if this ends up on the wrong side of history. And that's gonna fall on me as an Indigenous person. As people in places of privilege right now, you might not feel that existential threat in North Island Powell River. You might not have that visceral reaction to the Conservative Party that I have every single day, especially when I've lost 2 relatives to the opioid crisis in the last 36 hours. This is real for me. It's extremely important, and you need to know that the only pathway forward to beat the Conservatives is a vote for me. And I hope I can gain your confidence in that ability to show up in Ottawa.
Thank you, Tanille. Jessica and Glen, would you like to make any comments to the question at all? Or?
I think, yeah, it's a hard decision. It's a hard election, and I'm really glad that it's pretty easy for me to know who to vote for in this one. I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna do it on election day. I'm pretty sure. I'm like even less sure about my husband, but I'm like ish. I get it. It's hard, and we do understand. We really, really do. And we've been getting emails and comments about this for the whole election, and we've thought really hard about it. And it goes back to what we talked before about proportional representation and how important that change is, and also how I think the parties can do a better job working together when they see these big existential threats and realizing that there are all sacrifices that we could make. This riding is a microcosm of the worst of first past the post system, and we need to stay vigilant and stay alive to this and just keep going forward. It's a great time to vote Green because we are not going to push either one farther now. I'm hoping to get as many votes as Glen. I'm pretty sure I can do it. But be brave. Vote for what you want. Don't sacrifice your values. What Jennifer said. Vote for what you want. You're not voting for the leaders. You're voting for us. Who is the best person for the North Island Powell River? That's what you should vote for.
Thank you, Jessica. And Glen.
Yeah. Okay. So, I used to teach statistics. So I look at studies, and last time I was on Quadra, I ended up sitting beside David Suzuki down at the library. I never talked to him. It's kind of hard to talk to. But the thing is, the David Suzuki Foundation did a study, and I looked at the methodology, and it was quite good. It looked quite reliable, unlike some of them that are pretty wishy-washy. The ones that Jennifer mentioned, I was not really able to get at the methodology and see the details, so I couldn't say. Don't waste your vote on me if you're trying to get but on the other hand, you know what? The statistics I'm looking at, unless these two could get together, I don't think they're going to be able to beat Aaron, unfortunately. But if you're an Aaron fan and he's not here and you want a right winger, vote for me. Okay?
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for all the excellent questions, everybody from the audience, and also all the emailed in questions. We're going to head to the closing statements now. So for the closing statements, each candidate has up to 2 minutes, and we're going to start in the opposite direction. So Glen will start first, and we'll end with Tanille. Oh, okay, Glen. Are you prepared for your closing statement?
Okay. I'm never prepared, so don't worry. Listen, remember when I started talking the 5 minutes, which was glorious, that 5 minutes. The great most we had before was 2 minutes. But I was talking about the problem with the top-down party structure. I want to talk about a more natural, how does it work in nature? How do we make group decisions in nature? Well, look at the herd of horses. Everybody's looking at the lead stallion. He's the meanest son of a gun out there. He's biting and kicking, and everybody's afraid of him. He has no control over the herd. The herd follows the lead mare. All the stallion can do is bite their heels. They follow the lead mare because they trust her. Now, we've evolved into this system where it's all top down, and it's no longer about trust. In the old system, you selected a prime minister who you trusted, and the people that were there knew the people, knew who was trustworthy. And I would say, Well, we need to rebuild that system, because in nature, you don't select a leader by who can promise you the most candy or who can do this for you. You know, that's the way it's evolved into a marketing scheme where you make this list of promises. Oh, you need these votes. Well, promise them this, promise them that. That's not the way it works in nature. In nature, you do not select your parents by who promises you the most, or we need to get back to where we're dealing with the people we know around us and build the social I'm a huge socialist, but I want the social structures to be on the local level. You should be looking after. You want to help the poor person beside you. Help your family. That's the level we need.
It was interesting. I was on social media today. But anyhow, I saw a huge argument that the polls that we were referring to in our work were actually paid for by the Liberals. So there you go. There is no rhyme or reason to smell. 4 things I'd like you to consider when you decide who to vote for. First of all, the Liberal Party is poised to win this election, and Mark Carney has a big vision for Canada, a really big vision, and you deserve to have a representative who's a part of that team and turning that vision into reality and making sure it lands solidly here in this riding. Only a Liberal MP can deliver that. The only way to ensure that Mark Carney is the Prime Minister is to vote Liberal. Nothing is guaranteed. The only poll that matters is the one that happens on April 28th. Support for the NDP across the country is collapsing, and they could be left without official party status, and this will make them far less effective in Ottawa. This is not a criticism of Tanille, who is a very smart and capable woman. This is a reflection of the system in Ottawa and the limitations when you don't have official party status. And 4th, don't let anyone take your vote for granted. Just because you voted one way for many years doesn't mean you have to do it again. I have voted NDP for decades. I don't think this is the right year to do that. You should vote for what you want. You should not vote for what you don't want. You should vote for what you do want. So if you want to keep racism and extremism out of Ottawa and assure that Mark Carney is the Prime Minister and have a capable MP to make sure the programs land back here in Canada, vote for me. Thank you.
So we'll zoom out and look at the national level. What we can be pretty sure of is that the Conservatives aren't going to form government. So when we zoom into our riding and look at us, if nobody on this stage wins on Monday, and I really hope I'm wrong about that, but if that happens, the person who does get in will not have a whole lot of power because his party won't be in power. So we can fear a little bit less because of that. The Greens need at least 2% to maintain recognized party status, which is just to have a voice and to be able to ask questions during question period and to get a few resources. And don't think that voting Green is a wasted vote in this election. It isn't, because we need to make that 2% mark nationally to maintain status. It's a great time to vote Green if that's what your heart is calling you to do, if that's what you've always done, do it. And I just want to say, on Monday, no matter how it goes, this North Island Powell River is not the fight we need to be worried about. This has happened to us. What has happened to us over the past 5 weeks is what we need to be paying attention to. The wedges they have driven between us over the past 5 weeks and put us in camps, that's the fight we cannot lose. What happens at North Island Powell River, the person who gets elected, we'll get through that. Real revolutionary change doesn't happen when we're comfortable. We have to be uncomfortable so that we stay awake and we stay vigilant and we keep fighting for what we believe in. So don't stop, no matter what happens on Monday, fighting for this, standing up, joining in your community. Community is the only way through this, and we will get through it and we will come out better and stronger. But don't fall into the trap of letting them separate us into Liberals and NDP and the rest of us. We're here because we all see a better future and we have great ideas, all of us, about how to do that. So let's keep working together and don't lose sight of that.
I feel like we know that majority governments don't do our best work. I feel like we know the Conservatives aren't going to get the majority, but there is a risk that the Liberals do have a majority. As a First Nations person, there's been numerous promises that have been made that have not been followed through, including ensuring that our nations have drinkable water across the country. Meeting with Cayuga Chekasa children yesterday morning and having them ask me when they're going to be able to drink the water out of the tap was horrific. And it shouldn't be happening. It's 2025. We cannot have a majority government in place that continues to renege on promises. Arguably, Rachel brought in more resources to North Island Powell River than John Duncan ever did, and John Duncan was a cabinet minister. And we didn't see much out of that government. I thrive with very little resources. You tell me I can't climb a mountain and I will be over that thing in 4 seconds. I run towards chaos, not away from it. As a social worker, yeah, Kirsty knows, I am skilled at navigating difficult conversations. As a social worker, you enter heated, challenging, often hateful conversations with people that do not like you, and you need to work with that. You need to bring everybody down. You need to come forward with a solution that's going to work for everyone around the table and leave actually working together out of that space. And I feel like that is what we need in Ottawa to have good government. That is what we need for North Island Powell River to have a space and make sure that our needs are heard and that our needs are met in the unique and diverse geographies that we have here. We have a very high Indigenous population in North Island Powell River. I say proudly that we have 22 First Nations, and it's amazing. And I would be so honored if you could trust in me to go to Ottawa and do that good work for you.
Thank you so much to all the candidates in attendance this evening. And a couple of more thank yous. Thank you to the Discovery Islands Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. Thank you to Dan Sutherland for working the lights for us. Thank you to the sound master, Chris Thompson. Thank you for helping with that. And thank you to Melissa McKinney, who came on board to help us with the live stream, and which is amazing. So there's people at home watching, and from what I understand, it will turn into a recording on our YouTube page as well, if you want to look at the recording later. If there's anybody able to stay to help me put away chairs, that would be really appreciated. And anyways, thanks again, and also so the candidates have some materials here if you want to pick anything up before you leave. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for attending.